So another one that's really cool, and it kind of tells us what Hasbro's goal is when they're going to be handling this kind of gimmick is. For the longest time, we've been kind of wondering how Hasbro is going to be handling pretenders in the future. We saw through BotCon how through Boss Fight Studio they were able to make their own unique, large size vinyl pretenders, but that was BotCon and Fun Publication working with Boss Fight Studio, third party company. This wasn't something that was mainline, retail. So now we have more or less a clear cut idea of how Hasbro is going to be doing pretenders. And this is kind of going into what the Legends line is. Right now, the Legends line, or the smaller scale Legends line, when it comes to Titan Returns, is everything is vehicle based. It's a vehicle that comes with a head. And that was more or less what they were doing up to that point. Now they're kind of looking at it from a different standpoint where why don't we make these transformable little vehicles? Why don't we make these pretender shells where it's a body that opens up and we could put that Titan's Return head robot into that body, and then we got pretender shells. And so the first one they're doing is they're calling it Liege Maximo, but I mean it's Skullgrin. It's totally Skullgrin. The reason why they call it Liege Maximo is because it plays into the gimmick, what's happening with the power of the primes, which Liege Maximo was one of the original 13. And the gimmick is that Skullgrin is possessed by Liege Maximo, meaning like you'll have the pretender shell, the inner robot inside is still Skullgrin himself too, but when he turns into a head, it's Liege Maximo. Like he's possessed by Liege Maximo. That's the way that they're kind of explaining it. And so that's what it's going to tell us down the line is we're going to get a lot more of these where we're probably going to get stuff like a pretender shell, another pretender shell, or another larger figure where it's going to be a character, but then his head is going to turn into Vector Prime, or it's going to turn into Solus Prime, or it's going to turn into Alpha Trion, one of the original 13. Like that's kind of the gimmick that they're going with. And again, we still don't know 100% what their plan is, but at least it kind of gives us a clear idea of what pretender shells will be and how those are handled. And again, the cool thing with that is Japan will handle it differently. Japan doesn't seem to play along with whatever the Titans Returns or the Power of the Primes will be. They'll look at this and they'll go, "We're going to do this as Duros," which is what Skullgrin was in Japan, more or less. So it's kind of cool that that we have yet again another Master Force character. And so the more Master Force, the better. Like to me, like the top 5 Transformer series it's Beast Wars, Animated, Master Force, Galaxy Force, and then that 5th one is interchangeable with a lot of different people with opinions. But I always feel like those top 4 are unrivaled in my opinion in terms of quality. And it's just Master Force. Anytime you could get more Master Force stuff. And it really looks like, and again, it's more so because we've done all the 84, 85, 86 guys.
Yeah.
And Titan's Returns kind of really handled a lot of that 87 stuff with Target Masters and Headmasters. So now we're going into 88, 89, which is Pretenders, Double Target Masters, Power Masters. So we're now venturing into that field. And I'm really happy about this because I've always had a really special place in my heart with Pretenders, and by seeing this opens up the doorway to then more Pretenders and maybe even human Pretenders, like guys like Metal Hawk or even Landmine, names that they already have licensed. Like Landmine has been licensed for years, but it was always used on everything but like Landmine originally back in the 80s was a Pretender license. And then that name was thrown on everything but a Pretender as time. It's been used in Energon for like one kind of character. It was used in Cybertron for another kind of character.
Right.
Like they were just throwing it around anywhere but on what its origins were. And so it's really cool that maybe one day we'll get that Landmine, or as he was called in Japan, Lander. He was a Cybertronian that was interested in dating human girls. Like. And he was always like on a date when they would call him,
Oh my god.
Master Force was an interesting take on Cybertronian human relations, and
So I guess it was just like, well, remember those episodes where we have the robots turning into humans.
Hmm.
Hmm. There might be something here. Let's explore that.
Well, it was. I always felt that Master Force was always like Japan really wanting to have a human element because
Right.
they always do. They can never not have a human element. So this was them going like, well, we'll just make our own kind of series where the human element is really strong, but we could just say, oh, they're really robots under all of that,
Yeah,
like so they
exactly.
could still get away with it. And
Do
then
you
still,
do you
and
see them? Do you kind of see them making more? Maybe not pretender shells this scale, but like bigger.
I would like that personally, but I think that this is how they're going to justify it.
Mm.
I could honestly see them doing a mini samurai bludgeon. You know what I mean?
Ah,
And and
true.
and considering these also the crazy thing is that they almost kind of act as triple changers too if you look at these carefully
Yeah.
because
So they got the shell, they got the character on the inside, and then the weapon.
yeah, like it's like a weapon mode or something. So I could totally see they'll do samurai bludgeon, but they'll have a fold out cannon that when the samurai's on his stomach, he's kind of a tank arm cannon thing. Like I
Yeah.
mean, and then maybe bludgeon he'll be possessed by the fallen. Like
Right.
they'll do that. Like this is me just like spitballing here, but it's
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
I could see that. Like, and the good thing with pretenders is there's a lot of different pretenders, of a lot of different unique. There's Octo Punch, which he's kind of like the traditional. Like if you think of like scuba divers from like the 1930s with that oversized
The
like
bell.
fishbowl. So like
Yeah, the big fishbowl head thing
yeah,
going
so
on.
like you could cut like that's a unique kind of design with Octo Punch because he was originally a Pretender shell from that. You could do something with that, and the inner robot turned into like a crab kind of thing. So which and also a robot mode. So like a humanoid robot mode. So there's so much like different ways you could do that. Same thing. There's Stragglehold, which literally his Pretender shell was like a wrestler version of of Ted Danson.
Oh,
Not Ted
really?
Danson. Not Ted Danson. Hey
Deep.
mama, how about some cookies? No dice. This ain't over. He's a
Oh.
uh,
Oh
yeah. You
God.
know what I'm talking about?
What is he from The Simpsons?
Yeah,
Tony. Tony.
Tony Danza maybe.
No, not Fat Tony. Is that
Anyways,
it?
no, no,
That's the
no.
character's name.
It's. I'm trying to remember. Oh my god. Anyways, point. Someone's gonna comment and correct us, but it's just like there's that character too, who's just like he's a wrestling character, so you could do more a humanoid pretender shells. I'm just really curious what they're. But I think Hasbro to play it safe with this kind of gimmick, it's better to do it in a smaller scale. Because if they did it in a larger scale, then it's kind of like the problem that they have with Rodimus. Because
Right.
Rodimus is supposed to be this deluxe toy that combines with something that's larger. You'd end up with like all these pretenders would have to be like a Voyager price point. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? All of them would. So for them to put that much investment, where the good thing with the legends is you could have a wave of 8 of them. You
Mhm.
know, like it's usually how it usually works with these case assortments is legends are usually between 4 to 8 different
Mhm.
sculpts. Deluxes are usually 4 per wave. Voyagers are usually 2, and the leaders usually 1 or 2. It's usually one or
Right.
two for the leaders, and it's the same thing where I could see if they really want to have fun with pretenders and have that openness, they could do that. Where by keeping it small and less, I don't want to say less invested, but more simple.
Yeah, it's more cost effective.
And again, if that's the way it has to be, I'm totally behind it. And I know Takara will run with it. And maybe they'll give us a crazy like, Master Force, Beast 3 pack of Duros and Gilmer and all the other dudes, like again, if you're a fan of Master Force, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, so and
Yeah,
not to
yeah.
mention like I mean, the head will they'll play it into something too. Maybe the while the robot mode will be still keeping true to Duros or Skullgrin. For this, I'm talking about
Mhm.
the Japanese version. The
Right.
head that it transforms into, maybe they'll use it for the Headmaster Juniors on the Decepticon side. In the case of Cancer or Terrible and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, there's so many ways. I mean, again, I'm just spitballing here, but it's just I always look at how Takara will do it, and then how Hasbro will do it, and then see how they move forward because they're always on two different planes of thinking when they do these kind of things. So
Mm.
especially with the Legends line with Sakamoto. So it's always cool to see what they have planned. Anything else you want to say?
I'm wondering if these pretender shells will have like weapon packs or weapons with them. Like I'm looking at the little fists, right? So I'm wondering if they'll give them anything, any weapons or anything like that.
Well,
I think
that's
that's the
yeah,
only thing.
and that's definitely not a 3 millimeter peg, which is like
Yeah,
standard. So
yeah,
yeah, you are correct by pointing that out. There is fist holes there, but those are some tiny ass fist holes.
yeah.
So it's like what is usually up to this point, even a smaller Legends class figure will have a 3 millimeter fist hole to still hold all the weapons, with the exception of leader classes. They usually just have their own scale weapons, but usually everything from Voyager down to the smallest scale, they are able to share weapons. So yeah, it's true. It's very
Oh
interesting.
man, will they reuse all the Transformer Prime weapons? Maybe
I was just about to
we are
say
gonna
that.
see a return of those. So like the hammer, the prowl gun with
I
the
was
with
yeah,
the
exactly. I
bayonet
was
on
just
it.
about to say that. Like it's a possibility that they might repackage those. I mean, hey, for all we know, maybe. Well, the funny thing is all those original Pretender shells did come with weapons. They came with
Right.
swords or an axe or whatever. I would not be surprised if they decide to just pack those in with these. I mean, we don't see them here, but I wouldn't be surprised if when we see the final packaging that they might just throw that in on the side, like the Justice Hammer, like you mentioned before, or the
Yeah.
gun that came with Prowl or something like that, or like the Buzzsaw gun weapon that came with not Crumple Zone, Breakdown. Like
Hmm.
there's so many different combinations of stuff that they could do. But again, we're spitballing. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Exactly.
it's us basing what we see right now at SDCC and them not telling us enough just yet. So
Yeah. Exactly. They're holding the cards very close to the
yeah.
chest.